He froze mid-step. A little girl in torn mittens screamed, "Sir, my brother isn't breathing!" Stephen, a powerful millionaire, rushed over, thinking he was just helping a stranger. But when he saw the baby's hospital bracelet, everything changed. It had his last name. His knees gave out. His heart stopped. Could this child be the grandchild he never knew existed? Want to know what happened? Watch until the end and don't miss this emotional roller coaster full of shocking twists. Also, tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. It was the kind of cold that stung your skin and crept into your bones, the kind of morning where the city of Chicago seemed to hold its breath under a blanket of gray. The streets were quieter than usual, the wind too sharp for casual walkers. Somewhere in a part of the city where marble angels stood frozen in silent prayer, a little girl wandered through the cemetery. Her name was Lily, 8 years old, small for her age. Her coat was too thin, her boots too wet, and her mittens, if you could still call them that, were more holes than fabric. But she moved with purpose, carrying something wrapped tightly in an old scarf, something she cradled like treasure. That something was her baby brother, Dennis. She paused at a modest gravestone, worn by time, etched simply with the name Daniel. Lewis. She didn't know the man buried there, not really. But something had drawn her to this spot like a whisper in the wind, a feeling she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way the snow settled gently around this particular stone, or maybe it was just hope. Lily lowered Dennis onto the snow-dusted ground, brushing flakes from his face, and sat beside him. His little body was too still. His breaths came soft and shallow. She pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him, whispering the made-up fairy tales she always told when things got bad. Her lips trembled as she spoke. Once upon a time there were 2 brave kids who lived in a castle made of clouds. She didn't cry. Not yet. Crying used too much energy, and she needed every bit of warmth she could offer him. She didn't see the man who had just stepped out of the black car parked at the cemetery gate. Didn't see him standing, frozen. A few yards away, Stephen Lewis had come here alone, like he always did. No drivers, no staff, just him and the silence. He wasn't the kind of man who cried, not even when his only son died 6 months ago. Daniel had been many things, reckless, defiant, but he was still his boy. And every month Stephen visited this grave to remember and to forget. But today, something was different. There was a child here, a little girl, too fragile to be, alone, and a bundle in her arms. Stephen took a step forward, then she looked up. Their eyes met, hers filled with terror. "Sir," she cried out, "please help, my little brother isn't breathing." He didn't think, he just ran. Stephen's polished shoes slipped slightly on the snow-covered path as he rushed forward. The girl's voice had pierced through him, urgent and raw. She was now bent over the bundle, trying to warm the baby with her tiny frame, her breath fogging in the cold as she cried softly. He knelt beside them, his expensive wool coat brushing against the icy ground. With gentle hands, he reached out and pressed 2 fingers to the baby's neck. A pause, then relief. Faint but real. The boy was alive. His chest rose with shallow, strained breaths. "You did the right thing," Stephen said quietly. Not sure if she even heard him. Lily looked up at him, her face blotchy from the cold and panic. "He was okay this morning," she whispered. "I think the cold's hurting him." Stephen nodded. His instincts kicked in. Years of commanding boardrooms, making decisions that affected millions, now all narrowed to this one moment. One child, one heartbeat. "We need to get him warm," he said. "Now." Lifting Dennis carefully, Stephen stood and motioned for Lily to follow. She hesitated for half a second, then scrambled to her feet, slipping once before catching up. The warmth of the car hit them like a wave as Stephen opened the back door. The heat was already on, a habit of his even when he visited the cemetery alone. He wrapped Dennis in the cashmere blanket he kept in the back seat, then turned to Lily. "What's your name?" he asked gently, as he helped her into the car. "Lily," she said, her voice hoarse. "He's Dennis." Stephen nodded. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his phone to call the hospital. But before he could dial, something caught his eye, the baby's wrist. There, tucked beneath the scarf and the layers of grime, was a yellowed hospital bracelet. Faded, but legible. Stephen leaned closer, and then he saw it. The surname on the tag. Lewis, everything inside him stopped. His grip loosened. The phone fell to the floor. For a moment he couldn't breathe. Dennis. Lewis. The weight of 6 months of grief collapsed into that single second. He swayed, and then Stephen Lewis, the unshakable, the untouchable, crumpled to the floor of his own car. A soft voice broke. The silence inside the car. "Mr. You okay?" Lily's small hands were on his face, her threadbare mitten brushing his cheek. "You scared me." Stephen blinked. The world felt distant, muffled, like he'd been underwater and was just now breaching the surface. He sat up slowly, his eyes still locked on the baby. "What did you say his name was?" he asked, his voice barely more than a breath. "Dennis," she answered, her brow furrowed in worry. "He's my baby brother. We've been on the streets since our mom disappeared." Her words sliced through him, not because of the tragedy in them, though it was there, no doubt, but because they fit into something deeper, something buried. Dennis. The name wasn't common, and that bracelet, it wasn't just the surname, the ID number, the hospital code. He'd seen one just like it 6 months ago, back when his son Daniel was still alive. Stephen swallowed hard. The puzzle pieces were tumbling into place too fast for him to catch. A child with his name, his son's name, and a girl who said her mother vanished not long ago, right around the time Daniel had died. This wasn't coincidence. Lily looked at him, uncertain. "Please don't take him away," she said softly. "I know you're rich. I can tell. But I'm not giving him up." Stephen found his voice. "I'm not going to take him. I'm going to help." She narrowed her eyes slightly, studying him. "You're not like the others." He didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. With Dennis cradled in his arms, Stephen called the hospital. The voice on the other end confirmed they'd be ready. Respiratory distress, possible exposure, infant. It didn't matter who he was now. He was a grandfather, whether the world knew it yet or not. As the car pulled away from the cemetery, Lily sat quietly, eyes darting between Stephen and her brother. Snowflakes tapped softly on the windows. She didn't trust him. Not yet. But something about the way he looked at Dennis, it wasn't pity. It was pain, and something else she couldn't name. The hospital lights were too bright. Stephen paced the hallway just outside the pediatric care unit, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his coat, now dusted with remnants of snow. Inside, behind a thick glass pane, doctors worked around Dennis's tiny form. Monitors beeped in calm rhythm, but the air was anything but calm. Lily sat in a plastic chair near the window, legs swinging, mittens clutched tightly in her lap. She hadn't said much since they arrived. A nurse had offered her juice and a blanket, but she refused both. Her eyes never left her brother. Stephen watched her out of the corner of his eye. So small, so still, but something about her was strong. Stronger than any boardroom executive he'd ever met. She'd protected that baby with her life. Without question. Without complaint. A child, surviving where grown men might have fallen apart. The door opened and a doctor stepped out. Mid-40s, serious eyes, steady voice. "He has a respiratory infection," he said, "caused by prolonged exposure and cold air. He's responding to treatment, but he'll need warmth, rest, and antibiotics for the next few weeks." Stephen nodded. "And the girl?" "She's malnourished, exhausted, but no acute injuries. She's tough." He already knew that. The doctor hesitated before continuing. "There was something else, the baby's hospital bracelet. It's from Memorial downtown, issued 6 months ago. It matches a maternity record from the same week, under the mother's name, Claire Benton." Claire. The name hit Stephen like a gut punch. Daniel's girlfriend. The woman his family had called a mistake, a distraction, even worse, behind closed doors. His son had loved her fiercely and paid the price for it. No one knew she was pregnant, not even Stephen. "I want them moved to a private room," he said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Away from the main floor, no press, no questions." The doctor nodded. Orders from a man like Stephen Lewis carried weight, even without explanation. As they wheeled Dennis into a quieter wing, Lily followed silently. She didn't ask where. They were going. She didn't have to. She just reached up, grabbed Stephen's coat and walked beside him, not holding on. Not quite trusting, but not walking away either. Hours passed, though neither of them kept track. In the quiet of the estate's guest wing, a place seldom used, Lily sat curled on the edge of a grand bed, oversized in every way. The sheets were clean, warm, and smelled faintly of lavender. Dennis slept in a bassinet nearby, his breathing slow but steady now. Stephen stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring into the night as if trying to find answers in the dark. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy, filled with things unsaid. "I've seen pictures of him," Lily said suddenly, her voice soft but clear. "Your son." Stephen turned slowly. "In some of the magazines at the shelters," she continued, "they said he died from something bad. Nobody knew exactly." He nodded. "They still don't. Or pretend not to." There was a long pause. "Mom cried the day the news came on," Lily added. "She said he was a good man, that he wanted to do the right thing, even if it cost him." Stephen's jaw tightened. "She knew him well?" "She loved him," Lily said. "But she never said his name out loud. Not after we had to run." Stephen moved to sit across from her, the distance closing, though the space between them still felt like a canyon. "She disappeared 3 months ago," Lily whispered. "Told me to wait near the train station. Said she had to meet someone. She never came back." A knot twisted in Stephen's chest. Daniel had mentioned someone threatening him once, a cryptic conversation Stephen had dismissed as dramatics. He never followed up, never asked, and now Claire was gone. "I think they hurt her," Lily said, not crying, just stating a truth too big for someone her age. "Because of Dennis." The silence returned, heavier now. Stephen leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Lily, there are things you need to know about Daniel, about your mom, and about the people who didn't want them to be together." Her eyes met his, cautious but listening. "I failed him," Stephen said, voice breaking. "I failed all of you." For the first time, Lily looked at him without suspicion, not with trust, but with recognition. She knew what it meant to carry guilt. What followed wasn't easy. Stephen didn't rush. The words came slowly, as though each one carried weight he could barely bear. He spoke of Daniel, not as the perfect son the tabloids once painted, but as a young man torn between loyalty and rebellion, a man who had fallen in love with Claire not in spite of her past, but because she challenged his. "She was strong," Stephen said, his gaze distant, fierce. "And when my family found out, they tried to erase her." Lily sat motionless, eyes fixed on him. Her small hands clutched a corner of the blanket, white-knuckled. "My mother," Stephen continued, "Nancy Lewis. She's the reason I didn't know about Dennis. The reason Daniel died with secrets still buried." He explained the boardroom battles, the scandal that loomed just beneath the surface of the company's image. The night Daniel died, labeled an accident, had always felt wrong, too quiet, too clean. And now, looking at Lily and Dennis, Stephen saw the final piece. Motive. They couldn't let him start a life with Claire, he said. Not after what he found out about the clinical trials, the cover-ups. She was going to help him go public. Lily's breath caught. "You're saying they hurt him? Killed him?" Stephen didn't answer with words. Just a slow, solemn nod. The room felt colder suddenly, despite the heat humming softly through the vents. Dennis stirred in his sleep, and Lily instinctively moved to his side, her fingers brushing his tiny hand. "Why tell me this?" she asked without looking back. "Because you deserve the truth," Stephen said, "and because it's time someone took responsibility." She stood there, quiet for a moment, then turned, toward him. "Then fight with me for Dennis, for my mom." The request wasn't said with desperation, but with clarity, like someone who had been alone too long and had finally decided she wouldn't be anymore. Stephen rose to his feet. "I will. But they won't make it easy. They never have," Lily said. "But I'm not scared of them." That night something shifted, not just in Stephen or in Lily, but in the world around them, as though the truth had been waiting in silence, and now finally someone had dared to speak it aloud. For a few brief days there was peace. Dennis recovered quickly with warmth and antibiotics. Lily stayed close, never more than a few steps, away from her brother's side. Stephen, though still unsure of how to make things right, found a quiet rhythm. making hot cocoa in the mornings, answering her endless questions, watching Dennis sleep with a reverence that hadn't touched his life in decades. But peace, he knew, never lasted long in families like his. The storm came without warning. A tabloid article hit the newsstands first. Mogul hiding secret heir? A baby Lewis in the shadows? It included a grainy photo of Stephen stepping out of the hospital, Dennis bundled in his arms, Lily at his side. By nightfall, the phone calls started. Stephen stood in the study, same room where Daniel once confronted him about Claire. The headlines were playing on the muted television as he stared blankly at the screen. Papers were scattered across his desk. He poured himself a drink, then sat, exhausted, unaware of the small figure standing quietly just beyond the cracked door. He spoke to the room. Maybe to himself, maybe to Daniel. I should have stopped her. I knew what she was doing. Daniel trusted me and I let him down. Claire tried to warn us. And now she's gone. And that baby, his voice broke. He's the only piece of my son left. And I'm not losing him too. The door creaked. But Lily didn't enter. She held a small recorder, the kind she used to pretend was a spy gadget in better times. She hadn't meant to press record, not at first. But as Stephen spoke, something inside her told her not to stop it. The next morning, court papers arrived. Nancy Lewis was suing for full custody of Dennis. The petition painted Lily as a homeless, unstable minor, unfit, unsafe, a risk to the baby's well-being. Stephen's lawyers prepared to fight, but the odds were against them. That night, Lily sat alone in her room listening to the recording again, her thumb hovering over the rewind button. She didn't understand all the names or the politics, but she understood one thing. This recording told the truth, and no one else had dared say it out loud. The courtroom was colder than any winter morning Lily had ever known. Nancy Lewis sat with perfect posture, her grey suit crisp, her eyes sharp, her voice calm as her lawyer tore through every piece of Lily's life like it was debris. She has no legal guardian, he said, no permanent address. She has been living on the streets, hiding in cemeteries, exposing the infant to unsanitary conditions. Your Honor, this is not only unstable, it's dangerous. Lily sat beside Stephen, her fingers clenched in her lap. She stared at the judge, but his face had begun to change. He wasn't looking at her the way he did before. His expression was tightening, more formal, more distant. Stephen stood to speak. Lily is more capable than any adult I've met. She kept that baby alive with nothing. Mr. Lewis, the judge interrupted, with all respect, your company is at the center of an ongoing ethics inquiry. Your personal connection to this case is complicated. Nancy's lawyer stood again. Exactly. Mr. Lewis has a conflict of interest, and the girl is too young to make decisions on her own. We are requesting immediate transfer of custody to Mrs. Lewis. The judge nodded, quietly reviewing his notes. Lily looked up at Stephen. For the first time since they'd met, his face looked helpless. And then he said nothing. For a second, it felt like the world had given up. Nancy folded her hands, smug. This is what's best for the child, she said softly, only loud enough for Lily to hear. You were never meant to be anything more than a mistake. Lily looked down at Dennis in her lap, and then she stood. She didn't ask Stephen. She didn't even look at him. She stepped forward alone, pulled the small recorder from her pocket, and placed it on the judge's bench. I didn't understand everything he said that night, she said. But I know what it means to lose someone and be told to forget it happened. I know what it means to be invisible. She pressed play. Stephen's voice filled the courtroom. Raw, broken. I should have stopped her. I knew what she was doing. Daniel trusted me and I let him down. Claire tried to warn us and now she's gone. And that baby, he's the only piece of my son left. And I'm not losing him too. A gasp echoed. Nancy turned. Pale, Stephen stood slowly, not with shame this time, but with clarity. That was me. And I meant every word. The judge leaned back. The silence that followed wasn't just shock, it was realization. After a pause, he spoke. This recording not only calls into question the petitioner's motives, it confirms a pattern of manipulation and negligence. Until a full investigation is complete, Mrs. Lewis's custody petition is denied. Nancy froze. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. As for the minor, the judge continued, turning to Lily, this court recognizes your courage. Though you cannot legally act as guardian, you have proven to be your brother's protector. Effective immediately, Dennis will remain in your care under the supervision of a legal guardian of your choice. Lily looked at Stephen. Her voice didn't shake. I choose him. The judge nodded. Then so be it. Case closed. 6 months later, the cover of Chicago Weekly gleamed under the spring sun. A photograph. Stephen Lewis, once feared and untouchable, smiling gently with Dennis in one arm and Lily, finally wearing a dress that fit, leaning against him. Her eyes were calm, fierce, free. Behind them, on the porch of the estate, a framed photo rested. Daniel, holding Claire, both laughing in the glow of a sunset long gone. The headline read, A Legacy Rewritten. Every week we share stories that touch the heart, challenge the soul, and remind us of the quiet heroes among us. If you believe in second chances, in unexpected kindness, and in the strength of family, hit that subscribe button and stay with us. There's always another story, worth hearing, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.